Okay, so military history is packed with these epic stories of victory and defeat, right? But what about the weird ones? The conflicts that are just so bizarre, so hilarious, you can't believe they actually happened. Well, today, we're diving into what might be the dumbest of them all, the Great Emu War. And this quote, man, it just nails it. This isn't just some quirky little story. This is about the time a modern military literally declared war on a flock of birds, and the birds won. So you got to ask yourself, how on earth did this even happen? To really get this monumental failure, we've got to rewind the clock. We're going back to post-World War I Australia, where a very, very strange conflict was starting to brew. So picture this, it's 1932. The whole world is feeling the squeeze of the Great Depression. In Australia, a lot of farmers, many of them veterans who were given land for their service in the Great War, are already on the edge. Wheat prices are tanking, and just when they think things absolutely cannot get any worse, a new enemy shows up. That's the number, an army of 20,000 emus. See, after their breeding season, they started their migration, and they stumbled upon these brand new, perfectly irrigated farms. To the emus, it was a 5-star buffet. To the farmers, it was a full-blown invasion. The farmers were totally overwhelmed. They couldn't stop this feathered horde, so they begged the government for help. And the government's solution was, well, let's just say it was a little outside the box. And this is where the story just gets completely ridiculous. Okay, on one side, you have a bunch of flightless birds. Their weapons, beaks and feet. Their strategy, instinct. On the other side, the government sends in the actual Royal Australian Artillery, armed with 2 heavy-duty Lewis machine guns and thousands of rounds of ammo. This wasn't pest control. Oh no, this was a declaration of war.
So, the army is deployed, the newspapers are there to watch, the stage is set for one of the strangest military operations in human history. And, spoiler alert, it did not go to plan.
It was a complete disaster, right from day one. November 2nd, first fight, the emus just break up into small groups and run everywhere, making them impossible targets. 2 days later, the army sets a perfect ambush for 1,000 emus and the machine gun jams. It's just comedy. By November 8th, they'd fired off something like 2,500 rounds and killed maybe a few hundred birds. So the army actually pulls out. But then there's public pressure, so they get sent back in, only to finally officially give up and lose the war in early December. So why were these birds so tough? Well, as it turned out, the emus were basically tactical geniuses. They practiced guerrilla warfare, they'd scatter so the machine guns were useless. They were unbelievably tough. They could take bullets and just keep running. Their movements were totally unpredictable. It was like the soldiers were up against some highly advanced avian intelligence. And you don't have to take my word for how tough they were. Listen to this. That's a quote from the guy in charge, Major Meredith. He started to have this weird respect for the emus, comparing their ability to soak up bullets to armored tanks. I mean, these are soldiers who fought in World War I, and they were being completely outsmarted by birds. So with the army in full retreat and the emus basically doing a victory lap around the farmlands, the war was over, and all that was left was to deal with the absolute humiliation of it all. Let's just look at the final scorecard here, shall we? On the Australian Army side, casualties included severe, crushing damage to their pride. The outcome? A decisive defeat. For the emu forces, minimal casualties, barely a dent in their numbers. The outcome? An overwhelming, legendary victory. Of course, news of the Emu War got out, and the rest of the world had a really good laugh at Australia's expense. The whole thing became this legendary cautionary tale, a symbol of a horribly planned mission and a perfect example of what happens when you underestimate your enemy, no matter how feathery they might be. Which really just leaves us with one big question, doesn't it? In the fields of Western Australia, back in 1932, the answer wasn't man. It wasn't our fancy machines. Nope. It was a very large, very fast, and apparently a very, very clever flightless bird.